Hey everyone, it's Chris at Line Punch Forge. We're doing video number 2 of the flower ring. So this is the one we're kind of modeling it after. And we've got all the petals and all that fun stuff cut out. And we're going to put it together. So this video is going to be a lot about soldering. So we have all our little components here, and there's a little surprise. I was talking to the person who ordered this ring, and she wanted to know if I could set a stone in it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to set a stone in it. I got a little crown setting that I'm going to go ahead and put onto the whole thing and solder it onto a ring shank. And we're going to talk about that today. So these guys, I have basically a balled up piece of sterling that I've put down into the crown setting, filed it flat so the stone sits, and then now I'm using that same diameter wire to enlarge the holes that all the petals will go onto. So here I'm layering all the petals and the crown setting, and then what I've done here is drill the hole same diameter as the kind of the whole prong setting shank setup we got going on here, so it all kind of interlocks with each other. I filed the bottom of the petals flat, and then I'm going to end up soldering these leaves on. So before we get too far into this, I want to remind you that down on the lower right hand side corner is a little red button that says subscribe. Go ahead and hit that. If you'd like to get an update on whether or not I've got new videos showing up, hit that little bell button too. So what we are is soldering. So here I have my third hand set up. I'm going to be painting all these different pieces with some flux. Make sure I get them all nice and clean. And each one, once it's coated, I'm going to start layering it onto each other with hard solder. Now, we talked a little bit about hard solder and medium and easy in the past. But basically, what I like to do is use hard as often as I can, and then we pretty much use heat control as the flowing of the solder versus using the hard, medium, and soft, and extra soft, or extra, yeah. Anyway, I like to use hard. So in this project, I'm using mostly hard, but then as I go a little bit more delicate details, I'm using medium solder. So we got all the pieces all fluxed up, and I've got some hard solder in the little bowl behind the brick, and I'm going to start placing those as I start fluxing. All the pieces are fluxed now, so we're doing that. Carefully putting a couple pieces of solder in there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting it into the third hand to kind of hold it into place while I get all the other pieces set up, and then I'm going to use that wire sticking out the bottom to pull down on the whole setup and kind of lock it into place, and that's going to keep things nice and tight, so when the solder flows, all the pieces flow together and I don't have to do any resoldering. This part can be a little bit difficult, especially if you don't have all the setup and the pieces kind of fit in real nice to each other. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and hit fast forward on this, and then I will pick you up on the next step. Alright, here we are all soldered together. I'm going to pickle it real fast and then wash it off in some water, and we should be able to see kind of what we got going on. So far, so good. There we go. So you got the prong settings, you got the flowers, and everything all put together. Now off camera, what I'm going to do is kind of snip the bottom off a little bit, leave maybe 10 millimeters, and then I'm going to come back here now. And what we're going to do here is carve a little hole in the bottom of the brick that will fit the excess from the ring shank and the pedal, or the flower as it's soldered on. So what that's going to do is allow me to get it set up all perfect like. I'm carving a little tiny hole in here, and then I can set up my solder and it all sit nice and perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up and let you watch that. All right, here we are back at the bench with Tom Selleck. What we are doing here is, now that we've got the ring shank soldered onto the flower, we're going to form it around a mandrel. So this part is a little awkward. I'm pretty sure you guys know how to form a mandrel. Filming a mandrel, forming a mandrel is a little awkward because you hit the camera and you try and get focused. Then you pull it out of the screen. Excuse me, I'm tired. Pull it out of the screen and you can't see what's going on. But basically, I'm rounding the ring up. I'm using a technique I learned from Andrew Barry. He will take the ring shank and wrap it all the way around the mandrel, leaving things a little bit long. And then once he has it to the proper size, he'll take it off the mandrel and then saw both sides at the same time. And that allows for you to have a relatively perfect solder joint and not have to worry about doing all your measuring and making sure all your stuff is set up just right. So here's the awkwardness of trying to operate a mandrel and hammer and all that fun stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and let me do this, and I'm going to speed it up. Pretty sure you know what hammering on a mandrel looks like. And back again. I have the ring all sized up to size 7 in my, got a ring vise here. And I'm going to saw right down the mark that I made to create a nice line for me to solder. So basically that's what I'm doing here. Saw, 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 hammer, hammer, hammer. Well, no, not so much hammering, but sawing. Sure you guys know what sawing looks like, so I'm going to speed this up too, and then we'll go from there. All right, here we are back at the solder station. And the great thing about filming videos is that I could include my mistakes. Excuse me, it's getting late. So I can include my mistakes. One of the things I don't like about this graphite ring soldering mandrel is the fact that it's a heat sink. So it will pull a lot of the heat out and allow you to isolate your heat on one area without really affecting the rest of the area of the ring if you're careful. So advantage slash disadvantage, you don't always get the solder flow that you want. And so right here I'm placing some medium solder underneath the leaves of the that I'm attaching to the ring shank. And I did file some of the pattern off of that ring shank so that the bottom of the leaves have a nice flat surface to adhere to when I solder, melt the solder and make it flow. Sorry about the flies. I got flies in the garage studio today. They're ready to die. It's getting cold, so they're escaping. So now I have this set up. I've taken and with some kind of soft jaw pliers curved the leaves to about approximate the curvature of the ring shank so that I have a nice tight solder joint. And here we are going to solder one of them on. I can't remember if I'm successful on this one, but I'm going to go ahead and speed up. You'll see me take it off the ring mandrel, and then you'll probably see me try it again and have a leaf fall off. And then we're going to go ahead and resume talking right there. Here's the fun part. Watch it fall off. Oh, fail. Darn. So what happened was I put the solder underneath. The solder flowed, and the leaf went down. The problem was is that the shank wasn't to the right temperature so that the solder would flow onto the shank as well, and the solder only flowed onto the leaf. So, jeweler problems. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to change my plan. I'm going to basically do kind of a now my mind's going blank. I'm going to sweat solder the leaves onto the shank, but I'm going to use a slightly different technique and kind of scrap the graphite ring mandrel. So here I am. I'm going to do solder on, just kind of melt the solder onto the back of the leaves, and then I'm going to readjust using some titanium strips to hold my ring upright as I solder. So here, just melting the solder now, and then I'll pickle and clean. The most important thing about soldering silver and pretty much everything else is clean metal. Anytime you have metal that doesn't stick, there's very, very few things that could potentially be causing that. Dirty metal, solder didn't flow, dirty metal, not right temp, dirty metal, yeah. So if you have clean metal and good solder, right temp, you're going to get good joints as long as you have nice and tight joints. Yep, now I'm just rambling. So I'm going to go ahead and let you guys skip through some of this stuff, and you'll see me set up some titanium strips that will hold the ring upright and allow me to solder. Now this is medium solder, and remember everything else on the ring so far is done with hard solder, so heat control is really important. You can easily go from medium to hard solder temps if you're not paying attention to what you're doing. So go ahead and watch that. Okay, watch this. This is good times right here. Soldering the last leaf on. See what's going on here, and oh, do you see that? Leaf fell off. Crap. Well, what happened here was I had the solder melted on the portion of the leaf that was not actually touching the ring shank. So, like we talked about before, if you have a good solid joint, your solder will flow and you'll get good solder. Here is not the case. I did not have a good joint. My solder flowed in the wrong area, and I'm just redoing everything now. So we'll go ahead and let you guys watch the redo. Everything gets cleaned, remember that, except for maybe that guy. I forgot if I cleaned him. Look at that, I know what I'm doing. All right. All right, so here we are, just kind of making sure that everything is nice and tight. I went ahead and added a little bit more solder to flow underneath the leaves to make sure I had a nice solid joint. Sorry, tired. And so bad news is I lost some of the footage. I thought I hit record, I didn't hit record, so it kind of skipped ahead. What I've shown you is the basic kind of how to construct and put together, and just kind of my method of doing it. It's not the only method, it's not necessarily the right method, but it works for me and it looks good. So what I'm going to do now, here's the finished ring. I'm going to go ahead and post some pictures of kind of what it looks like all finished up. Stone is set, the ruby set in there, and yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them down in the comments. And as always, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and you're already on YouTube, so check us out there too. Check out some more of our videos, and let me know if you want to see some more. So appreciate you guys watching. Thank you.